We're standing outside a very lonely, remote farmhouse in North Wales, in the middle of a very wild moorland known as the Myrddyn. The house is called Trengove, which translates as the rough back or the rough ridge, so it gives a sense of the isolation out here. I'm with two other people. I'm with Myrddyn Phillips, and also I'm with Trengove, who are two good friends of mine, and we've been publishing a number of lists over the last year based on some hills in England and Wales, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about these today.
My name's Myrddyn Phillips. I'm the person that have compiled the listings of Pedwarau, which Europeak published earlier on this year, and its sister volume, which has just recently been published, called The Fours. And I mentioned Europeak List. I'm here with two people, Aled, who introduced the video, and also Mark Trengove, who is the editor and publisher of Europeak List. So these are the English hills. There are at or over 400 metres but below 500 metres. There's 296 that qualify, and the qualification is a minimum drop, which is also known as prominence or reascent, of 30 metres. There's also 3 sub-listings of hills within the Europeak List booklet, and there's a further 225 hills in those sub-lists. So 520 odd hills in all. It's almost self-explanatory, I think. We did toy around with one or two titles for the volume. You could sort of stretch it out a little bit and call them the English 400 metre peaks, but the Fours basically says what the listing is. First of all, the quantity. There's fewer in England that qualify. I think in Wales, because of the compactness of the country itself, the Fours are spread throughout. With England, they follow the main hill and mountain chains, so they come down from the Cheviot in the north-east, North York Moors. You've got Fours that are in the major hill areas, the Pennines, the lakes, the Peak. But you've also got Fours that are based around the border country between England and Wales, in Shropshire, and then it goes down to Dartmoor, Exmoor and Bodmin Moor as well. Well, we've now got a good bit of surveying equipment to accurately survey hills. So we can take that out on many of the marginals and the lower tier and the higher tier of our Pedwarau and also the Fours to see if they should actually qualify for the listing. So we envisage that we'll be doing that over the next year or two. The second editions of Pedwarau is due for one. Something that we'll no doubt come on to soon is the amount of place name research that was conducted for the Fours, and that again was Aled extended his role that he did for a Pedwarau, where he did an absolutely excellent job on place name research. So Aled's got many more names that he's discovered from local sources for some of the Pedwar hills in Wales, but I think even with the Fours, a second edition in maybe a year, maybe 2 years. But it takes a lot of work to sort of go in and put these lists together, and no doubt there'll be a lot of work for future editions.
Well, I've always been interested in the place names associated with our uplands. When you go up a hill, a name can add so much to the places you're visiting. It has connections to do with the history of the land you're walking, what's happened at a particular spot perhaps, or the kind of farming practices that have happened on these hills and have become part of daily life on the uplands. And I think a name adds so much to the essence of a landscape. Even though it's a purely man-made thing, it lends itself deeply to the environment itself. I think it's very important to that people actively collect the names that are out there, because the Ordnance Survey did a fantastic job maybe about 200 years ago, if a little more, 250 years ago maybe, where they collected many names across the entire country, which would have long been lost by now in a lot of cases. Unfortunately, little has been done in today's age to save some of these names that could be on the brink of extinction in the next 20 years. Well, for the Pedwarau Hills, I was making lots of inquiries into unnamed hills. And when I was conducting my general upland place name research, I was doing a lot of work at the time in Radnorshire, or Sir by Syfed in Welsh. And during this time, I actively had in mind that perhaps we will be working on an English equivalent to the Pedwarau list. And in order to sort of fulfill my role in that part, I decided to just extend my inquiries, slightly further over into the English border. And this was particularly interesting to me because some of the names are still Welsh. You can still understand them as a Welsh speaker. Some are slightly corrupted Welsh names, such as Cefn Cwnthli, which would have been from the original Cefn Gwynlle. But it's remarkable that during my research I discovered some local variations on these names, such as Cefn Cwnthli, which sort of goes to show you that the Welsh original versions are still surviving, even though Welsh is not spoken in that area.
I'm very keen on publishing lists which don't get published elsewhere, whatever country, and especially for Wales, as it's my greatest love. As for the history of the site itself, it began some years ago as a rather simple site with a different web address. And the idea was to try and publish lists for European nations where there were no hill lists originally. For example, the Netherlands, where we even produced a short list, to try and get people away from some of the more well-known mountain ranges in Europe, like the Alps, for example, and get them exploring some of the lesser ranges, like the Sudeten, for example, on the Czech-Polish border, or the Tatra on the Slovak-Polish border. So that there were lists, so wherever you went to in Europe, you could take a list out and say, there's some interesting hills and mountains to climb around here. So that's how the thing really started. Well, the plans as regarding 2014, it's going to take some time because these lists are still in compilation at the moment, but it's hoped that there'll be a list of the 1,000-metre fells of Finland coming out in the next few months. And beyond that, I'm keen to get some lists out for the Czech Republic, which is a country I'm currently exploring a little more. Again, maybe of the 1,000-metre hills of the country, and also of the Myrddins of the country too. That will be, I suspect, towards the end of the 2014. The best way to get onto the list is just to Google on Euro Peak List, and you'll get it as a pretty high hit immediately. And then if you look at the bottom of the first page on there, you'll see that there's a list for UK, and you can then navigate to Wales after that. Yes, I believe that Myrddyn's currently negotiating with Phil Newby, who runs a website called Harold Street, and that the list will be appearing in electronic format on there shortly.